Hello, I'm Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Welcome to Let's Talk. New Orleans has no shortage of piano talent. Much of it is homegrown, but some is imported. My guest today is one of those imports. He grew up in England, but for more than 3 decades, he's ranked among the Big Easy's best piano players, and his excellently named Absolute Monster Gentlemen are one of the city's tightest and funkiest bands. Along the way, he's also worked with Bonnie Raitt, Dr. John, Taj Mahal, and many others. His new album, The Bywater Sessions, is out just in time for the 2025 New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. Here to talk about all that and more is John Cleary. John, welcome to Let's Talk.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
You're not insulted by me calling you an import, are you?
No, not at all. Not at all.
You know, it's funny, I never saw Dr. John perform without a hat. I never saw Alan Toussaint perform with a hat. You are clearly in the hat is requisite camp.
Not always. Sometimes I just don't put it on. Sometimes I do put it on.
Does it help, do you feel? Does it help you play piano to have a hat, to have that
It
crown?
didn't help me last night on the gig I was playing because I was backlit, and when it was time for me to play a solo, the lights went down, and all of a sudden the keys all just vanished from sight because of the shadow from my hat. So yeah, so it can be a complete disadvantage sometimes.
The hat can work against you. The hat can work against you. I don't know if this is still the case, but one of the surprising details about you was that at one point in your home in Bywater, you had an entire wall covered by Lawrence Welk album covers. Is that still the case?
Yes, it is.
Why is that? You don't strike me as a Lawrence Welk guy.
I used to spend a lot of time foraging through the record bins in thrift stores and garage sales looking for old New Orleans R&B records, and I'd get some real gems. But in the process, I'd be thumbing through the records. I got quite good at going through really, really quickly. But I'd always stop and laugh at the Lawrence Welk record covers. And I'd also be enamored of the old Cha-Cha-Cha record covers. And it was, a thing. Mm-hmm. And they were so cheap, like 25 cents, that I would buy them, throw the record away. And I used to live in this big old house, and it was a way of decorating one of the rooms, was to completely smother it in Lawrence Welk records. And the great thing about the Lawrence Welk records was he always had exactly the same expression on his face in every photograph. So yeah, we have a Lawrence Welk wall. We have a room that's entirely plastered in killing Cha-Cha-Cha record sleeves, and there's a Hawaiian wall. Yeah, so yeah.
Ooh, your morning inspiration.
It was a very cheap way to decorate a house.
I think the only time Lawrence Welk was funky was when Pete Fountain was in the band briefly and misbehaving.
Earl Palmer played drums on one episode.
Did Earl Palmer, the great New Orleans drummer, played drums on an episode of the Lawrence Welk
It comes on. I mean, I did tickle me because I used to think it was the most hilarious show, and of course a lot of people think it's really, really corny, and it sort of is. But I have to say, man, the standard of musicianship of anybody that appears on that show is mind-boggling.
Airtight. I mean,
those people could really, really play. Whether the whole thing is to your taste or not. As a musician, you have to give credit where credit's due. Fantastic musicians.
They had the chops.
Players.
They had chops.
Singers, everyone sang in tune. It was great. It's great. It's not something it's not my cup of tea, to be honest with you. But I admire the musicianship, the craftsmanship.
Did you guys get the Lawrence Welk show in England when you were growing up? No.
No, we didn't have anything quite like it. No, that was certainly one of the main attractions, one of the main reasons I stayed in America.
Well, so when you were growing up in England, what was your initial impression of what New Orleans was? Like, what formed your earliest opinion of the place that you would eventually move across the pond to live in?
Stories and photographs from an uncle that had lived in New Orleans in the early 70s, at a time when Professor Longhair wasn't well known and just starting to come back. My uncle would go and see him at Jed's on Oak Street. They would alternate Thursday nights with Clifton Chenier. He came back with a great record collection of obscure New Orleans R&B and lots of great stories. And so New Orleans jazz was always on at home. My mum was that generation of English teenagers that fell in love with New Orleans jazz after the war in the 1950s.
Well, and you've talked about too how, you know, in England after the war, it was a very gray time, but the music of New Orleans represented color. It seemed alive.
I think for a lot of young people, that you know, Hollywood films and everything American just seems so glamorous. The whole of Europe was just battered.
Right.
The world, they were living in black and white existence, food rationing, and then here comes New Orleans jazz, and then Little Richard, and you know, and
Fats
Marilyn
Domino,
Monroe, Cary Grant,
right, all that.
Yeah, so the music, but the New Orleans jazz, I think just that sound. It's very hard for us now to imagine how wild and raw a George Lewis record was the first time anybody heard it.
Right. The great clarinet players. Yeah, from New Orleans, the clarinet player.
So we had a lot of New Orleans jazz records. We had Pud Brown records and all kinds of obscure Sweet Emma the Bell Girl. So yeah,
Sweet Emma from Preservation Hall. Yeah, her records made it over there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a family of music lovers and musicians, and everybody had great record collections. And at family parties, I would get an education because they knew I was really interested and hungry. So listen to this, check this out, and I was soaking it all up like a sponge, you know. So as a kid, I just thought, well, as soon as I'm old enough, I'm going.
And you did.
I did.
And you did.
And I stayed.
And you stayed. Before you came over, you actually ended up playing with Dr. John in England, but playing guitar in his band when he came over for tours.
I'd been here. I'd lived here for a few years and then gone back to England, and was playing in London and got the call that Mac needed a guitar player, and my name had been suggested. Mm-hmm. And we hit it off straight away. Mm-hmm. And at a session we were doing for the BBC, when everyone had left, it was just me and him. And I asked him about something about Tipitino, of voicing or whatever, and he said, "Oh man, you play piano." All right. Well, he said, "Tonight you play piano and I'll play guitar. We'll switch round."
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. I was 19, I think, or 20 years old, 21, something like that. And I'm playing piano in Dr. John's band, and he's playing the guitar. So he dug that, and I knew a lot of old obscure records that he really knew as well. So I think he liked the fact there was this young kid that was digging the old stuff.
Right, this young British kid.
Showing an interest, and so he was always good to me. Would like send gigs my way, so we became friends. And I idolized him. His piano playing, he's still one of my favorite piano players. And as a kid, being able to play guitar and just go over and look over his shoulder just to try and see how he's making these big left-hand tenths. He was an amazing piano player.
Heck of an education.
Yeah.
I love the fact that when you first came to New Orleans, you got a job painting the Maple Leaf Bar, and apparently you could drink as much as you wanted while you were working.
The deal that we were offered, man, I was broke. I had $100 when I landed here. I was 18, just turned 18. And the owner of the bar thought it was hilarious. And this is at a time before there was a lot of real tourism in New Orleans. It was kind of unusual to see an English couple. Me and my buddy from school came up to see a couple of English kids, and it was obvious we didn't have a clue what we were doing.
Right.
And he said, "You need a job?" I said, "Yeah." Desperately. I basically had to get a job within a week or 2 weeks, or else I'd run out of money. I'd have to go home. So he said, "Okay, paint the bar. The bar needs painting. Can you paint?" I said, "Yeah. I've never painted anything in my life."
Of course.
And the deal was, he said, "Look, we'll give you whatever the hourly wage was. You work whatever hours you want. You get paid at the end of each day. You get to see all the bands for nothing. You come to the bar free for all the music. And at night you get half-price drink, but you get free drink while you work.
Free drink while you work.
Free booze while you're working for a 20-year-old going on a mad adventure." It seemed a little bit counterintuitive.
Yes, counterproductive as well. Yes.
But as a consequence, it took us 6 months to paint the bar, and it was for the best 6 months of my life, I think.
Well, and it was at the Maple Leaf. James Booker, the legendary New Orleans piano player, had a gig, and you ended up filling in for him one night, right?
Well, I was a guitar player. Really, that was my main thing. I'd been playing guitar in bands before I came over. I started doing guitar gigs when I was really young, but I also was in the background was messing with the piano, and New Orleans piano players were really more interesting to me at this point. And I'd heard the name James Booker, but I wasn't really aware who he was. But there he was on the little list by the door as you walked in every Tuesday night, James Booker. And his manager, John Parsons, lived upstairs, and Booker had a spare room, and he would get free drink at the bar too. So he'd be there every day just hanging out, really.
Right.
So I'd be painting, and James Booker, he'd be standing at the bar, or he'd just go and sit at the piano and play. And sometimes it would just be me and him. You know, that wasn't, in the early afternoon, there wasn't much trade at the bar.
Right.
We used to fill up around 6 o'clock with all the construction workers. That was a real crew. Anyway, so I was supposed to be painting the outside of the bar, but I'd be sitting at the piano whenever the bar owner showed up. He said, "Come on, I get off the piano. You're supposed to." Sorry. And then at lunch break, I'd go back on the piano and play.
Right.
And then one night, Booker didn't show up, and everyone had already paid for the music, for the entertainment, and it was late, and they were on the verge of asking for their money back, and the owner said, "Get on that. Clean all the paint off." I had more paint on me than there was on the building. So clean yourself up quick and get on that piano and start playing before they ask for their money back. Keep playing till Booker gets here. Well, Booker never showed up, so I just kept playing. And that was my first piano gig.
In New Orleans?
First piano gig ever.
Ever,
It was the
right.
first time I really,
Right. You were a reformed guitar player.
in front of an audience, I was a good, so I just played one of the few tunes that I knew. Stagger Lee and Junko Partner and Tipitino, so I just kept playing them over and over again. And they all seemed to dig it, so it was cool.
And 35 years later or whatever, you're still playing piano.
Yeah.
If you're just tuning in, my guest today is pianist John Cleary. Fast forward a bunch of years now. You've been playing in town for 3 decades, a bunch of great records, won a Grammy for Go-Go Juice, I believe, along the way. Mm-hmm. You've got a new record called The Bywater Sessions, so named because you recorded it at your home studio.
Yeah.
What was sort of the philosophy going into this record? What was your approach for this particular record?
Well, playing music to make in a recording studio and playing music to entertain a room full of people in a bar or concert hall are two different contexts in which you generate musical noise. Mm-hmm. And so there's a prerogative to entertain a room full of people when they're right there in front of you. And you're limited to what you have there on the stage that particular night. And once you play every note, once it's played, it vanishes into the ether and is gone. Right. It's a one-off thing.
Right.
And the way New Orleans music is played is that we improvise around a set of themes. That's really what New Orleans music is. When you make a record is forever. And so if you feel that there's a song on the record that would benefit from background vocals and some horns, then here's your chance to put them on if you can afford to do it. And each song has separate requirements and would benefit from different arrangements and different treatments. And so the question is, do you treat it as a record or do you treat it like a gig? Well, my view has always been treat it like a record.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
And so that means it takes longer to make and it's more of a big deal. But you face a problem then when you go out on tour and you're playing the songs on the record, but the budgets don't allow you to carry a big horn section or an array of background vocals or a battery of percussion. And so that can be a challenge, so you adapt, and that's what we all do. But quite often at the gigs, people come up at the end, they want to buy some merch, want to take it, and they say, we have an array of CDs, and they always say, what sounds like what we just heard, because that's what we want. And so I thought, well, lately, I have been playing with this array. I've got my favorite musicians when they're all available, killer, top session musicians who are great entertainers, lots of fun, and masters of the art of playing New Orleans good time music. And I said, well, I want to just basically take what we do on the stage and then bring it into the controlled environment of a studio where we can take time and make sure everything sounds really good. And then I'm just going to count the songs off and we'll just play them down. So it's not a live record in the context of a live performance recorded in front of an audience, warts and all. This is a really well recorded classic performances of a bunch of the best musicians in town doing what they do when they go to work of an evening.
Yeah, and you're trying to walk that fine line between studio finesse and the live
it's the fun of musicians all playing together at the same time. Sometimes with records, you bring in, you cut the nucleus, and then you later, at a later date, might be a month later or a week later, or even in a different country, you bring somebody else in, they overdub, and somebody else overdubs, and so you get a great record. But it's all, this time everyone was in the room, all playing together, feeding off each other. So it has that, all the positives of a live performance, but all the positives too of a great recording in a studio environment. And John Porter came over to produce it from London.
Legendary producer, who's done all kinds of great records. Yeah.
And so I'm really pleased with it. It just sounds like what we do live. So this is the show we'll have at Jazz Festival with all the same musicians.
Do you feel like you'll have to explain to folks what Zulu coconuts are that may not be from here? You've got a song called Zulu Coconuts.
I don't have to explain it when I'm in New Orleans, but I do have to explain it when I'm on tour. And I do my best, but I don't want to deliver a 10-minute soliloquy on the virtues of the Zulu coconut to a bunch of people in the Netherlands who haven't got a clue what I'm talking about on a gig, or wherever, or Switzerland, or wherever, or Japan, or wherever we're playing. So I do sort of give a cursory preamble, but then I figure if they like the song, they can go and figure it out for themselves.
You figure it out from there.
Lots of Zulu coconut information on Google if you want. If you want to go check it out.
Side B on the vinyl record opens with "Just Kiss My Baby," the Meters song.
Well, that's once again. This is a song actually that we did record on a previous album about 20 years ago, and it's a real staple. It's a great tune, of course.
Great tune.
Meters,
yes.
Great New Orleans, quintessential New Orleans funk. But when you play these songs live on a regular basis, there's a Darwinian process of natural selection that happens over the course of several years. And as I said earlier, the nature of New Orleans music is that it's improvised around some themes. So every time you play it, it's different. Mm-hmm. The musicians have the freedom to improvise and come up with ideas spontaneously. And sometimes someone will do something and everyone in the band will go, "Whoa, that was really cool. That was really hip." And it's not unlikely that the next time you play, whoever did that thing will do it again. And everyone will go, "Oh yeah, that was that thing you did on that." And then it becomes part of the arrangement.
Right.
And at the same time, someone will try something out and everyone will look around and go, "What on earth were you thinking when you played that?" No, and that, or you'll try, I'll suggest something and we'll try it, and the guys go, nah. All right, forget that. But that process over a period of time means that you get these incredibly complicated and clever and fun to play details that are the flesh and bones of an arrangement. And so when you cut a song and then 20 years later you're still playing it and it's morphed into this whole different thing, I think, you know what, that's what we do on the gig. People dig it, that's what they want to hear on a record, let's put it on the record. So that's what we did. So there are a couple of songs on the record we've actually played before, but these arrangements are so different that I thought they merited inclusion and they needed to be presented.
Absolutely,
for fans,
absolutely, worth revisiting for sure. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is piano player John Cleary. So you've been on the road a little bit lately with Bonnie Raitt, doing opening for her on playing solo gigs. Playing solo piano to open for Bonnie, shows for Bonnie. Are you doing some new material when you're during those shows too? Or are you doing?
I play, yeah, I mix it up every night. I play different stuff. I really treat it like in my mind, I'm playing a Tuesday night gig at Chikiwawa. It just happens. Last night I was in Wichita in front of 2,000 people, or the night before I was in Kansas City in this most incredible, big old Victorian theater. But from my point of view, I can't see the audience. I can't see anything with these lights shining. So I just look down at the keyboard. It's like Tuesday night at Chikiwawa or Saturday night at the Maple Leaf. And that way I feel like I'm kind of bringing the New Orleans vibe. And the people, that's what they want. They love that.
You look down at the keyboards hoping that your hat doesn't cast a shadow on them and obscure them from view.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, you know, your relationship with Bonnie, I mean, you've had this professional relationship with her going back many, many years. You were in her band for a while. She's recorded several of your songs, I think. So, I mean, that you guys obviously have an artistic synergy there that you respect one another and bring something good out in each other's music, it seems like.
Yes, I think she likes New Orleans piano style. I've never played in her band before me. She digs the New Orleans thing, and I like a lot of the same stuff that she likes. I was a big fan of hers for years coming up. I met her on a Taj Mahal record session, and then I met her again shortly after when I was playing with B.B. King. I was doing a gig with B.B. King, and she was a guest. And at that time she was looking for a piano player, so she asked me to join. So that was a great gig. And I'd played with her for 10 years and did several records. And but it was very hard to do that and pursue play the music that I was writing with my New Orleans band. I miss playing with New Orleans guys. So I did it for 10 years, that was good. And it's been very nice coming back out and just jumping back into the groove with her, and I'll be playing with her this across Europe this summertime, opening up to promote the record. But we have a lot of stuff coming up with the band. We're going to be playing some European shows. We're playing shows around the US, obviously, and going back to Japan, where we have a avid fan base.
The Japanese like the New Orleans music, huh? I mean,
they love it. Yeah. It's a real good audience for New Orleans music. You know, anywhere in the world we play, they get it. It's a given. If you're playing New Orleans music, people are going to have a good time. And I explain to people outside who don't really understand the context. I said, I point out to them, it's blindingly obvious when you think about it, but a lot of people tend to forget that funk and jazz and R&B is the ethnic folk music of New Orleans. It's just that it's so good that it's been adopted by musicians all around the world. And 3 times in the 20th century, New Orleans music influenced the way popular music was played all around the world, with jazz, with rhythm and blues, and then later on with all the bounce stuff,
the hip-hop, right?
You know, the hip-hop stuff. This tiny little town is the ethnic folk music of New Orleans. Everywhere else they have the music business and all this other stuff. Here, people just play music because it's a musical culture. For, you know, I'm preaching to the choir, to anybody that watches this, because we're all in New Orleans, we already know this. But it's amazing how you have to kind of spell it out for outsiders, and they go, wow, I'd never thought of it like that. But it is funk, R&B, jazz. That's the music that people just play here. Elsewhere, other parts of the world, they might play polkas, or they might play whatever they play. Here, it's soulful and it's funky.
It's soulful and funky. Yeah, I mean, you even had that quote in the, talk about you said something, sophisticated, nasty, good time, low down funk is the folk music of New Orleans, which I've never heard it put quite that concisely, but that's absolutely correct. I mean, it's a funky town. I mean,
yes, it is.
That's what we do.
That's why I stay here. That's why I live here.
Going back was not an option. Once you had been marinated in the funk of New Orleans, you were not going back to England.
I like being in all kinds of places. It's a big old world out there, and I've always been someone that liked recreational travel and adventure. So I've travelled all around the world. Not all around the world, but a large chunk of it. But I like the idea of New Orleans being home, and I think I'm very blessed, very privileged, and that I'm not from here. I wasn't born here, because I think it's part of human nature that if something becomes usual to you, you become inured to its delights and those things that make it special, and that's never happened to me. I'm so proud and pleased and privileged and happy to live in New Orleans. I consider myself very lucky, because every time I walk out of my front door, every time I land at New Orleans airport, it's like, man, I'm excited. This gives me a thrill. And I think if I'd been born and raised here, I'd probably be thinking like English music was the hippest thing. So there is that aspect to it. But I'm lucky with my job. I get to travel and go to lots of other places. And so I can actually contrast and compare. And there are lots of other parts of the world that I really love. I mean, I love England. Gorgeous. English countryside is beautiful. And I feel like I'm very lucky to have a foot on either side of the pond culturally. I'm English, that's the stamp that was put on me when I was little. But I've lived here for most of my life, and New Orleans certainly puts its stamp on you. So I think it's kind of nice to be something of a hybrid.
Well, it's the best of both worlds. I mean,
I really think so. Yeah, I really think so. You know.
Well, yeah, and as evidenced by the Bywater Sessions, as evidenced by, the Absolute Monster Gentlemen. I mean, it's a killer band. You've got a heck of a history here in this town now. So I think you're one of us now. So congratulations.
I would like to think so. Well, New Orleans is largely comprised historically of people who've come here from somewhere else. The music is a mixture of European and African. I'm part of the mishmash.
Part of the mishmash.
I'm very, very happy to be part of that. But yeah, I'm very. But the great. I'm so lucky in many respects. But perhaps the one that means the most to me is that I get to play with these incredible musicians, guys, most of whom are from here, some of whom are transplants like me. But the delight. What's so great about New Orleans music is that there's a great importance placed on being a good craftsman, an artisan. There's a lot of prestige associated with being able to play well, and you get kudos from your fellow musicians if you can handle your business and do that right. But at the same time, you have to go out and entertain a demanding audience who have paid good money to come out and be entertained and who want to have fun. So, there are places where you have jazz musicians who are amazing players who can dazzle with technique. That's good. Here, you need extra. That's not enough. You've got to dazzle with technique, and you've got to have a smile on your face, and everyone's going to have a few drinks, get up, shake their thing, pass a good time, like they say. That's got to be fun. You can't get too highfalutin with this stuff. It's got to be digestible to a room full of people who are out to have a good time, and that's really what makes New Orleans stuff so good. The musicians can really play, but then they apply that to the task in hand, which is to generate a good feeling. And so, as I said earlier, when we do that, it doesn't matter where in the world we are, whether we just came back, we just played in Cuba. Cubans were going crazy. A few months ago, we were doing it in Tokyo, and the Japanese were jumping up and down, going nuts. We play in Ronnie Scott's jazz club, where usually people are sitting down, being very serious. They were all up out of their seats dancing. So that, to me, I'm the luckiest fellow in the world as a band leader to play with these great New Orleans musicians and just spread this joy. Make a joyful noise.
Make a joyful noise. Well, you guys certainly do that. So congratulations on the new record. Congratulations on making a joyful noise around the world.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming to chat today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, good.
Thank you. Cheers.
Once again, that was John Cleary. I am Keith Spera. We'll see you next time on Let's Talk.